This podcast is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Check out the affiliate link down below to help support the show.
Welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in cEDH. I'm Cam.
I'm Dylan.
And this week, we are fresh back from MagicCon Vegas.
That's exactly what it's called.
That is what it's called.
MagicCon Vegas.
Yes, we had an awesome time, and we played a ton of cEDH.
Yeah, like 25 games, I think, total,
Something
somewhere in
like
there.
that, yeah. I think we lost count after the second day, but it was definitely in the 20s, somewhere in there.
Right, yeah. We're going to talk about our games mainly. Do you want to talk about how, like, Vegas went?
Yeah, we can talk about Vegas as a whole first. Yeah.
What would you go first? What was your general impression?
I had a great time in Vegas. I mean,
Sorry, was that a curveball?
I'm already stumped.
Shit. How was Vegas?
How was Vegas? It was good. Full stop. I feel like a teenager who doesn't want to be here.
Yeah.
I really had no qualms with the event. I sat here and I was trying to think of some kind of a qualm. I don't have any qualms. We just mainly played a ton of Magic. We walked around, looked at the vendors and the artists, got a couple cards. We picked up a couple art pieces as well, got some signatures. So overall, we had an incredibly successful weekend.
Yeah, we mainly, though, did what we always do at these kind of conventions and stuff, is just like plant ourselves in the command zone and play as much Magic as we can with whoever would like to come up and play with us.
Honestly, this is how I get a gauge of the cEDH meta. I want to know what's out there, and the best way to know what's out there is just to see what people are playing.
Yeah, there's definitely some notable cards that were continuing to win games, either for me or for my opponents, that I think is different than recently. Some updated cards, in my opinion.
So let's do a bit of a recap from last week's podcast where we talked about the decks that you were bringing to Vegas.
Yes.
So this was a list of Najeela, Tivit, Bloodpod, Timnatana, and I, for the life of me, could not remember the fourth deck that you brought.
Tivit, Rograk Silas.
Rograk
Silas.
Silas. How could I forget Rograk Silas?
Yeah, I don't know. That one was a great one. Rog Sai, should I just go over how each one was?
Yeah.
Okay, first off, I'm going to go Rog Sai. I was able to win a game, and I lost 2, I think, with it. Deck is extremely explosive. I mulliganed to 3, and I was able to present turn 2 Necropotence attempt. It didn't resolve, but still, I think that's reasonable for a mulligan to 3.
I think you had a turn 3 win attempt then too.
Yeah.
That was also stopped by interaction.
Yeah, so it was still powerful even on a low mulligan, which is exactly what I like about the deck, is you can kind of comfortably mulligan super low because the deck has a lot of explosive starts. And the game that I did win, I was able to ad nauseum down to 2. I won off of a Rite of Flame into a Dockside into many other things. The deck is super sweet. It's in a really great spot. Born Upon a Win is a great addition. The extra turn spells, I'm playing all 3 of them. I'm playing exactly Brian Cook's list. I think the list is great. It's super explosive. The only issue with it is the same issue that, it's the issue that it's always been, is if you don't find the card advantage, you run out of steam quickly. If you don't find the Rhystic Study or the Mystic Remora, if there's too much blue at the table, it can be hard to fight through all of that.
Yeah, and it's part of the reason why the deck has to be really good at mulliganing, because it's really imperative that you find these card advantage pieces.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. The deck, it did a lot or a little. Well, even when it did a little, it still felt like it did a lot. So overall, good experience with the deck. I'm going to keep it together. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a really good start with that deck right there, I think.
Next up, Timnatana, Bloodpod.
Yeah.
I put this deck back together, made a couple changes. I was just running the straight database list. So I'm playing a lot of pingers in this, a lot of Orcish Bowmaster, Mayhem Devil, Goblin Sharpshooter, all those combined. You would think that would be good. Still didn't love it. There was a couple times where I was able to get the game pretty close to locked out, but it didn't really matter. I wasn't able to close the game out quickly enough, and somebody else was able to fight through it and win anyway. Trinisphere can be very strong, but it can also act as a protection for your opponent,
it's
stopping
like
them from
defense
interacting.
grid almost some of the times.
Yeah, a lot of the time. Sometimes I wonder if I should just be playing it as a defense grid, like play it on the turn that I'm ready to go off or something.
You know, that's a good point, but your deck isn't really built to have stuff like that. Like Silence is good in your deck because it's 1 extra mana, but you already need like 6 to go through your Birthing Pod line.
Right.
So like having a 3 mana Silence seems like if you want that, maybe you just play Defense Grid, which also seems worse.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would play it. The ideal is that you would stack your opponents out in other ways so they wouldn't be able to interact with you when you go for your win. I just wasn't able to find my win quick enough.
Defense Grid is bad because it doesn't make Mana Dorks cost 3 mana, so there is definitely that that side of Trinisphere too.
Yeah, Defense Grid doesn't actually stop your opponents from advancing themselves.
I kind of like Sharpshooter. We didn't really get to see this a ton, but I know a big problem with Bowmaster sometimes is like you want to kill a really problematic creature, but it has 2 or 3 toughness and just can't get there in like a single person's turn. So having the Sharpshooter kind of makes it double, which is kind of nice. And when you kill the 2 toughness creature, your Sharpshooter untaps, which is cool. And it's another combo piece though. But you said it doesn't work with Kiki Jiki.
It doesn't work with Kiki Jiki because part of the combo is the copy that you make. When it kills something, it untaps both of them. But Kiki Jiki is still tapped, whereas Splinter Twin is on the copied creature. So you get to activate that one more time. The creature itself is what's making the copy. So you have a Goblin Sharpshooter out, and then you put a Splinter Twin onto it. You activate the Goblin Sharpshooter to make a copy with the Splinter Twin's ability. The copy taps to shoot something and kills it. And when it kills it, it untaps the copy and the original. Then with the original, you tap to make another copy. The copy shoots the first copy, which then untaps both of them. And you can make another, and that the copy that you shot can shoot a player.
It is a very confusing way you have to set it up.
You need Goblin Sharpshooter, Splinter Twin, and then a creature with 1 toughness on the board somewhere. So Kiki Jiki doesn't work.
Kiki Jiki does not work with this.
Which
yes.
I knew. It just took me fucking forever to figure out why.
The wording is confusing because in the primer it says this card can also combo with Splinter Twin, which makes it sound like there's another card that it combos with, but also I think is just referring to that it can wipe Mana Dorks and Utility Bears out in the value case.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it's supposed to be implying that there's another card that it combos with.
I don't think there's another card that it combos with.
Okay. We spent way too much time talking about Goblin Sharpshooter, but I do like Goblin Sharpshooter in the deck. I was happy to see that.
I was able to grab a win with this deck. I do still like the Birthing Pod line. I do love Orcish Bowmaster in this deck. An unfortunate part about this deck is it loses to Orcish Bowmaster. There's a lot of Mana Dorks. Goblin Sharpshooter itself is a 1/1. There's a lot of creatures with 1 toughness in this deck that I don't particularly love in an Orcish Bowmaster world. We've talked about this a lot kind of off camera, that Orcish Bowmaster is like the only card in recent memories where we've been like actually altering our decks to help play around it.
Yeah, and we'll certainly be talking about that more in this podcast too. So.
Yeah, we got a lot more to say about Orcish Bowmaster, but Bloodpod still, I think, is a solid deck. I was able to get a win, but it just felt a little bit too unreliable. The control that you have with blue, you just have a lot more influence on the tempo of the game, I think, with blue decks. I still want to keep on tweaking this since I kind of reverted to the database list. I want to add some of my tweaks back into it and see if that'll make it feel a little more comfortable for me. But overall, I was more happy with Rogside than I was Bloodpod.
Yeah, I think that with how the meta is right now, I can't necessarily say that I'm surprised with that. But I'm happy to see that you picked up Bloodpod again, because I know that you love that deck. So
Najeela?
Yeah, Najeela.
Najeela sucks.
Najeela's ass.
It doesn't suck. I don't gel well with this deck anymore. At one point I did, now I don't.
When it was like the best deck in the format, like solidifiedly, I knew that was just crumbling as it came out of my mouth, and there was no salvaging it.
No, it's good. Solidifiedly.
Yeah.
It once was powerful. It still is very powerful. There's no doubt about that.
People win with the deck.
It's very good.
They win tournaments with it.
Yeah, just for me, I don't really love the playstyle anymore. It's, in my experience, we're gonna talk about the 5, like a lot of the most impactful cards right now, and a lot of them are creatures. We don't have to talk about that right now, but that issue makes Najeela's attacking kind of worse. I wasn't able to build up a board very quickly at all. It was difficult to get through anywhere because people could just block immediately. I was able to win off of just the deck is full of tutors and counterspells and consultation wins. Like you can get wins that way.
Honestly, I feel like maybe that's just how it's winning tournaments.
Definitely, yeah.
Like who's winning with Derevi or Grim Hireling?
Yeah, it's probably a backup plan at this point. At least for me, that's what it felt like. The Derevi plan was a backup plan, and I just had stuff like Diabolic Intent and Diabolic Intent, right?
Yeah, because that will sacrifice a token.
Diabolic Intent. I wasn't sure if I wasn't thinking of the 4-mana one. Never mind.
Beseech the Mirror.
No. Well, yeah, that one too. Probably Najeela could use, but either way, Najeela is a good 5-color good stuff deck. I just don't love what it has access to in the command zone anymore.
No, that's fair. It's if you're not gonna give me card advantage in the command zone, you better be fucking really good.
Yeah.
And like Najeela is really good, but I feel like as a combo piece, Najeela does have a ton that you have to set up. Like I much prefer it as like a 5-color outlet, and like and that's really it. Really.
Yeah, it just facilitates 5-color good stuff. It turns your Fierce Guardian chips on really quickly. All those things are very true.
Yeah, like a 5-color Rograk, I guess is what I would want to call it, right? Like it's a 5-color commander you can get off Jeweled Lotus, which I also think is really important. But I totally agree. I think it's kind of impossible right now to get in. Like if you play up against Time and they go Wall of Roots, like there's like what are you supposed to do against that? How do you get around that?
Well, I mean, you can at least build up tokens against the Wall of Roots, but I understand what you're saying.
I guess, but like there's a lot of decks that are like that now, where they play like these weird creatures that have these humongous and like cEDH like bodies right now. So there's definitely it's just I'm over explaining how hard it is to get.
There's a lot of
Vegilla
Lothos,
through.
Fairy Masterminds. There's a lot of creatures that generate value, Drannith Magistrates, yada yada. Just like every player is playing
Orc
a creature
armies,
on turn 1 or turn 2. It's not as easy to get through. Najeela was once incredible because there was always a guaranteed mono blue deck at the table. Like there was just ways to get through all the time. Not the case anymore.
No, that's a good point too. Yeah, not as many monocolored decks are guaranteed to be played.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's just the hive mind has spread so much that everyone's playing good decks now.
Yeah, right? That's good, though. That's good. Speaking of good decks.
Tivit. I talk shit on Tivit. I didn't quite understand how it was as good as it was. I fucking get it now. The card is really good.
The deck is really good.
Esper Shell is strong.
Esper Shell is really good. Displacer Kitten is really good.
That's also very true. Yeah, I think red gets a lot of hype because of the heightened power of Dockside and Underworld Breach and Deflecting Swat. But after that, I think the card quality kind of drops pretty significantly. Whereas like there's 3 9s and then a whole bunch of 6s. Whereas Espers, you have like all 7s and 8s. And I think eventually...
Honestly, all 8s and 9s.
Like in white, all of your cards are like 7s and 8s. So I think it balances out a little bit better than red. Things like Grand Abolisher, things like Drannith Magistrate, things like Lotho, there's a lot of good Ranger Captain of Eos, Esper, a lot of good white creatures recently that help that shell of just mid-range grinds so much.
Yeah, you can just play the slow game up until you're able to get Tivit out. You get to buy back a bunch of mana that way. You get a bunch of clues. I think what we figured out this weekend then is just say clue.
Yeah.
Just vote clue.
Here's what we figured out on the walk home after day 1.
Yes.
We figured out that you should always say clue, except there is one situation where if Tivit has no clues, none at all, and they have 10 mana, or if you'll give them the treasure, they will get up to 10 mana. 10 mana, then you should just give them more treasures. Do not give them clue. Yeah. But if they have any other situation, just try to flood them on clues. Eventually, they'll be short on mana and they won't be able to do anything with the clues anyway. There were several games where I would just like lose the game with 12 clues in play because I didn't have enough time. Like you just get shut off on mana sometimes. So there are situations if they have way too much mana already and no clues, then you can give them more treasure. Otherwise, just don't give them the treasure. It's so valuable in an Esper good stuff deck like that.
Also, if you're playing Dockside Extortionist, you want them to flood on clues that they can't crack. You play Dockside for $1 billion, and then all of a sudden you are winning games you had no business winning before.
Yeah, Dockside Extortionist is a great card against this deck because it makes so much artifacts, and also Mana Drain is a great one. Everyone's been slimming on Mana Drain. I think that card is really powerful right now. It was really strong for me. There was one game that I countered a Void Winnower, and I felt very powerful doing that. And immediately afterwards, you won with Demonic Constellation Thassa's Oracle.
100%. That was my favorite win of the weekend. Thank you very much, Alex Heyer, for providing the Void Winnower. That was great.
That was such a stupid game. I was just like, this is so good. I get so much mana off this Mana Drain.
I went from thinking, oh my god, I guess I have to wait another turn to see if I can win, to, oh no, I can win.
Yeah, regardless of that, Mana Drain, I think, is still just like a very strong card.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going back to, like, I'm really happy to have it in all my decks. It's just another way to be able to deal with creatures, which are becoming ever more important. And just having extra mana now in, like, these slower decks too. Like, it in Tivit is super good because it helps you cast your commander. I've really liked it in, like, even Kenrith because it helps you cast your Kenrith then too. So
great, powerful card, strong, love it. Hard counters like that and delay are things that I'm leaning more towards recently. And the more we get into Rhystic Study World, the more I want things that can answer anything. If I'm going to be drawing cards, they got to fucking do something.
Yeah, 100%. So Tivit deck good. Tivit card, meh, still just fine. But at least, you know what, the other thing I did want to say, the 6/6 body on it is also relatively threatening.
I think of it like a cryptic command. It does a lot of things kind of poorly at an overall bad rate, but since it can do all of them, it ends up being good.
It ends up being really good. Yeah, we did talk about last week or the other week about how it is 4 of the 5 things that we're looking for in a cEDH commander.
Mana, card advantage, Haymaker, combo piece.
Yeah, and the Haymaker ability, it's like... if it had one more power, like it would be a completely different game changer when it comes to the Haymaker aspect.
Yeah.
Exactly. But like that 4th turn is a lot of time to be able to try to get yourself out and around Tivit there. So there's outs. Like it's this is an incredibly powerful deck, and it's gonna win a ton of games for you, and you're gonna lose to it a ton. But like just keep in mind like where its weaknesses are, and you can get around it.
Disclaimer, the reason why if it had 7 power would be good is because 3 hits with 7 powers, 21 commander damage, and that would be so much better than 4 hits as it is right now. It would be a huge difference.
And then replay what I just said.
What about you? You played some cEDH decks in games this weekend.
I did, yeah.
Tell me about your decks.
So I played Rocco. That's kind of been the longest deck that I have together now. And I'm on my Rocco list. I had made a couple changes. I finally took the Collector Oof out and put in Manglehorn, and of course that card didn't come up this weekend. I didn't end up playing Rocco a ton, really. I won a game with Rocco, which I didn't think I was going to win, but thanks to my Rule of Law creature, I felt actually pretty protected. I also misplayed really bad with Rocco this weekend and like kind of forgot how much mana I needed for Birthing Pod lines, and just it ended up being the deck that I played the sloppiest with, which makes me think that, okay, maybe it's time to move on to a different food chain deck and try to play a different food chain deck.
You and I don't stick to decks for very long, so that makes sense. I feel like you've had this one probably like 6 months or more.
I think so too, yeah. And I remember being high on this like quite a while back, and I've certainly diminished how much I am in love with this deck as much then.
Deck is still a good, powerful deck, I think, but I understand what you're saying. It's just,
I love having options. I absolutely love having options in the command zone, but I don't like how many opposition agents are always in play and Drannith Magistrates are always in play. Like I want to be able to operate more outside of my command zone more and more as more creatures come into the format. And I feel like Rocco is just built around operating in the command zone.
Yeah, it's more obvious what you're doing. Your opponents know what's going on. They know they have the tutor right there. They can count your mana. So it's easy for them to pick you apart like easily, for lack of a better, like, you know what I mean? Like they don't really have to think of it too hard. It's kind of just easy to pick apart Naya. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So I also played Kenrith this weekend.
Yes.
I had taken apart Thrasios Brews and the Blue Farm list I had, and I put together this Kenrith list that was just this mesh of 99 cards that I want to play in cEDH.
Kenrith pile. Just Kenrith pile.
It's great, yeah. I mean, now I know what cards I want to take out. Like, the whole point around this deck was I didn't want to lose to Orcish Bowmaster.
Yeah.
So I didn't put, like, any dorks in it except for Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, no, you're trying to limit the amount of damage that you'd be taking from Orcish Bowmaster, which kind of makes sense. If you don't get hurt by the Orcish Bowmaster, that means that the Bowmaster is going to be going somewhere else, which means you can use the Bowmaster to your advantage sometimes. If you can draw a couple extra cards and talk your opponents into, hey, there's a Birds of Paradise over there. You want to kill it? They'll say, yeah, probably.
The only thing is, the whole reason why I wanted to put this deck back together was because of Agatha of the Vile Cauldron.
Ooh.
Something about just like paying 1 green mana to give her a couple +1/+1 counters and then making it just a blue mana to draw a card is very appealing to me. But like that's really between that and Esper Sentinel, those are really the only, I guess Lotho too. Those are really the open doors to Bowmaster that I have, but they're all too much value as opposed to like a mana dork that I have to tap or something that's not really going to do anything as it's just in play.
Yeah, I think all the cards that you mentioned will do something on the turn cycle, right? Like they'll kind of do something almost right away. As Sentinel Lotho, they'll do something before it untaps for you.
Exactly.
Dorks are just too slow.
There are opportunities, but it's, I think, been a really good strategy so far is to just not let that happen. A lot of times what we've been seeing with Bowmaster is that it will just target creatures that are out there instead of actually punishing card advantage. So when you don't give people the opportunity to just punish you for having a 1 toughness creature, you can force them to punish card advantage in more situations.
Definitely, yeah. One of the reasons that Bowmaster is so strong is that it's kind of too much of a good choice or a good move to want to ping off the creatures. But what ends up happening sometimes is the Bowmaster player will ping off the creatures that are at the lower powered decks, or not the lower powered decks, but the decks that aren't ahead right now. If that
Like
makes
if the
sense.
Savala deck is behind,
Right.
but it just happens to have these dorks out.
You kill the dorks because you can, whereas the Ad Nauseam deck is going to win in a couple. Just shoot the damage right at their face instead.
Yeah, I feel like there just needs to be more of that happening. You're the Ad Nauseam player. Let me just fire a couple of damage at you.
Right. Yeah. It's so strong because you can play around it you can work it against your opponents. You can use it against them.
Yeah, it really is strong.
So Kenrith, what other cards have you taken out though? You said you were looking to take some cards out.
Neoform is one that I haven't liked. I put it in because it's a Kenrith card that I remember playing and really liking in the deck. There's a lot of really good options that you have just in general with Neoform. You can go get like your Thassa's Oracle. Hooray. It really sucks when you're not playing any Mana Dorks though.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot less creatures than when all of your creatures just provide you long consistent value. You're significantly less incentivized to go get another value creature, and when getting Thassa's Oracle or Grand Abolisher are not options really anymore, there's really no point. So I feel like I could be playing literally any other spell and that will feel better.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you don't want cards that are dead very often. And Neoform is good because you're playing in a deck that it's never dead in, but if that's not the case, get it out.
And I put Calling Ritual in the deck because of my win record with Calling Ritual.
Sure,
And it's just, I won another game this weekend because of Calling Ritual.
Yeah.
But I had another game where it was in my hand and I wasn't really going to be able to do anything because I couldn't follow it up with Kenrith. I didn't have the extra white mana. So while it's still a really good card, I feel like Kenrith is a little bit more mana intensive than the more Jund heavy Ad Nauseam decks that I'm used to playing this card in.
Interesting. I still feel like it would be so good in that deck though.
It is. I mean, in the times that I do have white mana left up and Kenrith or even Kenrith is just in play still.
Yeah.
It is still absolutely brutal. I can destroy my own dockside and get my own dockside back after this. And that's how I fix my color mana problem.
Yeah.
But that hasn't always happened, so it's not necessarily guaranteed to be on the chopping block, but I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I guess another point with the dockside, if you bring back the dockside, it's probably not going to make a lot of treasure since you just destroyed everything 2 or less.
It's actually going to be real shit.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of bad.
It's going to be real
yeah,
shit.
I guess that plan of reanimating dockside, not so good.
No, probably not.
But you can put +1/+1 counters with the green mana on Kenrith. I guess that's also not very good. Yeah, I
or
guess
if there's like a ranger captain in the
Yeah.
graveyard or something else
Okay.
that's in the graveyard. Literally any other creature than dockside. That's what I like about it making black mana, but
I see what you mean, though. There are a couple boxes that have to be checked off in order for it to be good. So kind of same issue with Neoform. Like if it's not good all the time, put it on the chopping block.
yeah, because there are going to be cards that will be good all
the
of the
time,
time.
right?
Yeah, so why wouldn't I just play those?
I want to be flexible. I want to be able to do exactly what I want to do. I don't want to be locked into, well, I could do this powerful thing if I could only check off these other boxes.
Yeah. So that didn't come up as much as Neoform, but like Neoform burned me 100% of the times that I drew it this weekend. Getting it out of there.
Anything else that you want to get rid of from Kenrith?
Now, right now, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Is where I want to be at.
Kenrith slapped. You won a lot of games with Kenrith. Whooped
It
their
did
asses.
really well. Yeah. The One Ring is really good.
Oh, yeah.
Seedborn Muse is really good.
With the One Ring.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Oh,
yeah, love that. Not playing Ad Nauseam and have not regretted that quite yet. I'm a little bit more on, let's just try to get Kenrith out there and an advantage engine so that way we can keep the cards flowing, keep like even deflecting SWAT and Fierce Guardianship going too. So
And those aren't always in play for Kenrith decks. I feel like I see a lot of Kenrith decks that are not playing those cards.
yeah,
You're more of a Kenrith deck. You're getting Kenrith out.
exactly, which is why I feel a little bit more comfortable playing it as opposed to deck that's not.
Like a 5-color Storm deck that has Kenrith at the helm.
Exactly.
Which there are several of those, and you're not a STAX deck, really. You're not doing STAX.
I'm not doing a STAX thing. I'm not doing a Razaketh thing.
You playing Janeth Magistrate?
I am playing Janeth Magistrate.
I feel like
though,
Janeth goes in
yeah.
every white deck.
Oh, 100%.
Is it right? Like,
Is
is there a white deck you don't play it in?
No.
Shorikai, if you're not playing creatures.
I guess, yeah, if you're polymorphine, but then that feels wrong.
Yeah,
then.
yeah. You should
That
just play
feels
Janeth
wrong.
Magistrate.
Yeah, I feel you're lowering the value of your deck by so much.
Yeah. Janeth
Yeah.
Magistrate. That's a card that. Well, we'll get to Janeth Magistrate again in a second. But
I played one more deck this weekend.
Let's
too.
go over that one more deck.
It was Nimrus.
Nimrus.
Yeah.
Nimrus. We just played with Veggie, right?
We
with
just
Decked
played
Out.
with Veggie, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the timing works out. That yeah. So and Veggie was playing Nimrus. spoilers, that already came out, but it fucking did awesome.
It did awesome in that video.
But for you also this weekend, I feel like it did awesome.
I think it did pretty awesome for me this weekend too. I had a really good day on Saturday. The Saturday of the event, I won probably 50% of the games that we were playing.
You were like 4-1 before we went to lunch, I remember.
Oh yeah, and it went a little downhill. I only had one other win in the afternoon, but it was still a great morning that I had. And Nimrus was a huge part of that. Just being able to tempo the table, make sure that I was always on top of in terms of card advantage, and making sure that no one was getting too far ahead was just the exact way that you had to go.
Definitely. That one's another one that kind of incentivizes you to play well, because it forces you to interact with your opponents on all of their turns, because you get the card back for doing it. So as your opponents are getting all shut down, you're going up in resources. Great tempo deck.
Forces you to play a little bit more slowly and a little bit more cautiously too, which I think one of my biggest problem is that if I find a win, I'll just kind of go for it.
Yeah.
Which is why I do tend to play better in like aggressive decks. But what I like about Nimrus is that it's kind of forced me to kind of slow down a little bit more and go, okay, well, I have the resources where I don't necessarily need to go for the win this turn. I can wait for another window, another opportunity, use my counter spell on someone else's like tutor on their turn so that nobody can do anything by the time my turn comes up.
Were there any specific cards from Nimrus that like shined that you're like, this is great in this deck, or in this? Was there anything like that?
That's a really good question. The One Ring.
The One Ring again, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like I really want to churn out Nimrus pretty quickly, and like the One Ring is such an easy thing to also be able to churn out. So just having other like card advantage engines that aren't in my 99 is super important.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm trying to think. I feel like every card in the deck just shines.
It's just just good cards. It's just card draw and tutors and interaction.
Yeah,
right?
like Opposition Agent has Flash, and that triggers Nimrus, and that's already a card I'm going to play in every black deck.
Right. It's just extra good in that deck. I mean, like, that's the sign of a good deck, though. It's like you don't have to play bad cards that are good with your commander. Yeah. Good cards are good with your commander. Like, that's where you want to be.
There's a lot of cards that like I wanted to come up more. Like I really wanted to test Wave Break Hippocamp a little bit more, but that one didn't get to come up. But like all the interaction that I played was super helpful, except for Misdirection. That card is very annoying.
It's not like Deflecting Swat. Only spells.
It's not like Deflecting Swat, and I have trouble remembering that sometimes.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Although I do love Misdirection, but I understand it's no Deflecting Swat.
Yeah,
that's
no
for
Deflecting
sure.
Swat. But I've really liked this deck quite a bit. So this is going to be one that I will definitely be continuing to play and continuing to test out.
So Kenrith, you keeping Nimrus? You're keeping.
Yeah.
Rocco
might be switching.
Might be getting the axe.
Yeah,
Understood.
we'll take a look. We'll see what's going on with that. But that's kind of what I'm thinking there.
Okay, cool. Should we talk about what I'm excited to talk about, which is like the standout cards for the weekend? We played 25 games at cEDH. There were some cards that showed up more than once.
Oh, they showed up in most of the games that we played, yeah.
Yeah.
The first one is Dockside Extortionist.
We're not going to dwell too much on this. Dockside has been probably the best card in the format since it came out.
Yeah,
but
guess what? Nothing's changed.
Dockside is still fucking insane. It shined in many decks. It was the reason why a lot of games were won. It's just a very powerful card. We can move on quickly, though.
Yeah, definitely. Orcish Bowmaster is the next one on the list.
This one is a new one, and I think it is, we've talked about it already, but it is a firm staple in my opinion. The token that it makes has to go along with your Swan and your Spirit and your Treasure now. It's just another cEDH staple token, I think. It came up in so many games. We got 6/6, 7/7s, and 10/10s throughout a lot of the games. It shut off my Tymna very quickly, which is one thing that I was afraid of. Oh, fuck. Tymna kind of sucks because ETB, shoot Tymna, you draw a card off Tymna, shoot Tymna again, she's dead. You fall behind very quickly. We're going to talk about the One Ring in a second too, but the One Ring was another reason why Orcish Bowmaster was so interesting. You could argue with an opponent, you have a Bowmaster, I can draw 3 cards right now. If I do that, well, you'll kill that person's
Drannith Magistrate
or something. You know what I mean? Like you could team up with players very easily, which is a reason why Orcish Bowmaster is so strong. It stood out.
It overperformed this weekend. It definitely did. And we already kind of talked about where the damage tends to be going right now, which is just the small creatures. But again, I think if you don't give people the opportunity to hit your small creatures, then it forces them to make the right call and hit people in the face with the damage.
Yeah, I think it's like the reason why it's so easy and powerful to build around Orcish Bowmaster now is one, mana dorks are kind of they're the worst mana option that we have. You know what I mean? They're not as good as 0 mana rocks. There's a lot of other options now, so they are kind of slow already in their own right. So it's almost like you kind of make your deck a little bit better by cutting them already.
Yeah,
And then
really.
not having that target for Bowmaster, like you said, the Bowmaster has to go somewhere else now. It's like it's going to go at someone's face, probably might be yours, but it could be one of the other Birds of Paradises or something like that. So not only does playing around it help you survive longer, but it helps you defeat your opponents better. It's just easy to do.
Yeah, this card definitely overperformed this entire weekend. Didn't see it do a terrible amount with wheels, but just the consistent amount of repeatable card advantage that we've been seeing. The orc that it creates is incredibly relevant, can really punish Tevishes and like other planeswalkers that you see too. Can help you get in with card advantage too, and if you're a Tymna deck, we just saw that do so much work too.
Yeah, definitely. And we can move. You want to move on to the One Ring, because I was just going to talk more about how like the One Ring, just like card draw is what's strong right now. That's always what's strong. That's what Magic is. That's what cEDH is, especially. But these versions of card draw, the One Ring, the protection is fine. It's nice. It's not the reason I'm interested in this card. If you get it out quickly, by turn 5, you've already drawn like 21 cards off of the card. Is that right? 1, then 2 is 3, then 3 is 6. Wait, 1, then 2 is 3.
Yep.
Then
plus another 3 is 6.
6.
Plus 4 is 10. Plus 5 is 15.
Plus 6 is 21.
Yes.
So after 6 turns, you get 21 cards,
Which is like an ad nauseum right there.
like it's just free every time you draw cards. When you tap it to draw 4 cards and you invest no mana the turn that you do that, it's so powerful to be able to do that, and especially at instant speed to activate it.
And that cast trigger that it has too, or the protection clause, was actually a lot relevant a lot of the times, because there were a lot of times where like I was looking at a way to like breach for a win in my hand. I would be like, well, I can't do this anymore. I have to now pivot to a completely different plan, or just end up completely waiting for the protection clause to go away and hope that no one else can try to squeeze in a win right now.
Yeah, stuff like that, stuff like Malcolm, stuff like Kiki Jiki, it does protect against all those things, so it is important to note, but it doesn't protect against Thassa's Oracle. So I felt like there were some instances where like it didn't really matter, it didn't really come up, especially if you get it out early. Oftentimes early on, the protection doesn't do anything at all.
That's true.
But the option that you can have it as a like resource protection later on is really cool.
Yeah, this definitely was the reason why I won a bunch of games this weekend. I can't think of a deck that I wouldn't put this in anymore.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it goes in every deck. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it's another card that goes in every deck.
Yeah, exactly. Ristic Study is another card that just continues to overperform in the format.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't need to talk too much about Ristic because we know Ristic has been good for a while. Interesting. I feel like when I first got into cEDH, there was some debate whether or not Ristic Study was playable. Some people said that it wasn't. It was just a little too slow, which is kind of hilarious now because it's just, someone commented something like this recently, actually, on one of our videos that like, that's so funny to think about now because Ristic Study, like, getting a Ristic Study out early is like the number one identifier to me for like who's going to win that game.
Oh, yeah, me too.
100%.
Because especially right now, I feel like there weren't a lot of people paying for Ristic Studies at the tables we were playing at. And that includes me and you. I feel like there's just a lot more loose play around these card advantage engines because there's so many of them. And people just get so sick of playing around them. And they're like, well, there's 2 in play right now. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I'm just going to let them draw.
Right, yeah. When they stack up and your opponents are like 3 of them are triggering, 4 of them are triggering, it's like, well, I can't fucking, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that one person can't draw a card, but the other 3 can. Does that really make a difference? Not really. Like,
no, I'm going to cast my Mockstein.
Right, yeah. Like, so, but it's tricky. Like, sometimes it will matter. In the early stages, it will matter. The best thing that you can do, as always, is to try to ignore these things.
Yeah.
So how do you win the game in as few amount of cards as possible? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not super focused on how do I get rid of the Ristic Study? How do I play around the Ristic Study? No. How do I ignore the Ristic Study? How do I cast as few spells to win the game? That's what I want to do.
Can I play Silence, right?
Yeah.
Is there like another effect that I can play that just, it won't matter how many cards that they have?
Another reason why White's cards are all 7s and 8s, I think, is because Silence and Grand Abolisher and cards like that are so strong in this format. They're just with you have 3 opponents and everyone's playing Ristic Study. Get all the cards you want. You can't cast spells anyway.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, exactly. So I've been loving White decks for that reason. Yeah,
100%.
Speaking of white cards, Dranith Magistrate, another card that has been overperforming.
Yeah, Dranith is another card that we've seen for a while, but this weekend I feel like I saw it every game. It dictated the pace of every game. It was one of the reasons why I felt Tivit was good, because while my opponents kind of floundered sometimes if they didn't have access to the commander, I could just play a fine mid-range deck until someone else would have to kill the Dranith Magistrate. Yeah. I could stop their commander from coming, and then my commander would come in and I would dominate. So it leads you, it puts you in situations where you're striking second. Like we said earlier, like it tricks you into being a good Magic player. Like it allows you to play a good game when everything is all stacked out, and then at the last minute, you can stop the player from going off after they got rid of the important stacks for you, and then you strike.
I liked having it for like against Tivit even too. So like there's just so many situations where you just feel so safe with the Dranith Magistrate in play, and it pulls so much weight that I don't know why you would play Polymorph in a white deck anymore.
Yeah, if you're playing white, I feel like all of these cards, in my opinion, right now are auto includes. If you're playing the color, you need to play the card.
I added a 6th card to this list.
Give it to me.
Thassa's Oracle.
Oh, sure.
This card won most of the games this weekend.
Technically, it won the game. But anything could have won after all of these cards did their job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. But I feel like we just happened to run into a lot less Underworld Breach and a lot less Dockside Infinite combos, and it's just a lot more solidified wins. And I think that is, if there's going to be more One Rings out there, I think that's just going to be a good direction to go. It's just don't even give them the option to put you off of a win condition for a turn. Just play a win condition that's going to go around it completely.
Yep, Thrasios kind of stinks into Orcish Bowmaster because you can't draw through your deck. All of these convoluted, extra fancy win conditions, they're just... the more time goes on, they all get more and more locked out and stacked out and stopped and whatnot. Whereas Thassa's Oracle Consultation just remains at the top, unstoppable, unbreakable. Like it's just such a good combo. I want to lean into it so much more.
Do you remember some of the decks that we played against?
Yes. So some of the things that stick out to me were Malcolm decks I thought were very good.
I thought so too. We played against the Malcolm Kettis deck that did very well. I think we lost to that Malcolm Kettis deck, I think.
Pretty sure we lost to a Malcolm Kettis. I'm pretty sure we definitely lost to a Malcolm Vial Smasher solo, right?
We played a couple of Malcolm Vial Smashers.
That was the big one to me, that, this is a mini Tivit. That's what I was thinking. It's just kind of a fast Tivit. Malcolm is really good, obviously, there. So you have your one-card win con. You have your mana advantage. If you can get your other commander to have card draw or something, we didn't really see that. Although Kettis with a curiosity effect on it, that's pretty good.
Oh, that is pretty good too.
In the Kettis Malcolm deck that we saw, that's pretty good.
The way to give Malcolm card draw is you play Malcolm Timna. We didn't see any Malcolm Timnas this weekend.
You lose on the red. You lose the combo, though.
Yeah, that is the problem. So it doesn't really give you the same thing. Malcolm Crom.
Oh,
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'm going to build it.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to build it.
That seems really good.
What else did we play against? Anything stick out in your mind?
We played against 2 Cricks.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And we lost to one of them, and the other one had a turn 1 win if I didn't have the interaction.
Yeah, the first one that we played had like 3 win attempts, and we had like all the interaction. We were set up for it perfectly. The second one was the game that I had a Trinisphere in play, and I'm like, this definitely stops Kirk. And Kirk was like, no, it fucking doesn't.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, we thought it would.
Yeah, I was giving them enough time, and it didn't really matter. They just drew so many cards, it didn't make a difference. They were able to get out of it.
We played against a couple Tivits, couple other Tivits,
couple mirroring Tivits.
Yeah,
yep, definitely.
No one's surprised by that.
A lot of Tivits. Actually,
we did get to play against Talion.
Talion was cool.
Yeah, Talion was cool to see as well. Definitely does impact the board and can draw a lot of cards.
I think
Talion's really good.
It's a Nimrus type deck. It's just blue-black good stuff. It can definitely win tournaments. It's just strong archetype.
We didn't see a lot of Kinnan, although a lot of people purposefully didn't play their Kinnan decks against us.
Yeah.
And the person who did play against Kinnan was a good sport, as we got Kinnan to cost 8 mana throughout the game.
Yes.
And I think we kind of learned our lesson there.
Definitely.
And then I remember losing to the Selesnya Selvala deck as well.
Oh, yeah.
Which was just incredible to see.
Right, yeah. That deck has so many confusing points of interaction. You never know when is the right time. It's a very difficult to play around and against, and especially because it draws you cards. You're like, yeah, I'll wait one more time. I'll take another draw.
This is fine.
Yeah, this is fine. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I can't fucking do anything anymore. It's too late. We're already past the point. And
right, yeah. And it's like, shit. So, but those were the ones that I remembered playing against.
Overall, I thought Vegas was a blast. I mean, it was so much fun getting to play Magic with people who want to come up and play Magic with us is always so cool. Getting to see everyone is a blast. It was a great experience and definitely would do again.
Before we go, we have another topic from SoulCal Acura that I wanted to throw out there here.
I am excited. Give it to me.
This is the difference between control and STAX in cEDH and how viable they both can be.
Okay, well, we've talked about Nimrus and Blood Pod so far in this podcast. Nimrus, I think, is a great example of a control deck. Would you say that?
I would say so too, yeah.
I think of it more as a tempo deck because tempo is just what control has to look like in cEDH because the late game is not safe. It's hard to get to that point of complete safety like you can with control in other formats.
I think of it as tempo is what allows you to control the table.
Yes, definitely. And then STAX is something like Blood Pod. STAX is much more preemptive. You're getting the pieces out early. You're trying to prevent people from doing anything, not reacting to what they're doing.
Yeah, a more adaptive way to control the table.
I feel like they both have pros and cons.
Yes.
I feel like STAX, you can proactively use them to help kill the table. Maybe you can make them into creatures and Tymna, and you can attack the table. You can progress the board. But the weaknesses of that is sometimes you STAX out the wrong player. Sometimes you stop the player who is not ahead at all from doing anything, and the other player who isn't affected by your STAX pieces can freely do whatever they want. But not only that, maybe using your protection against you, that can be a terrible feeling, and that can happen a lot in STAX.
And it makes it really important to make sure that you know exactly what your opponents are doing and what you need to play. Whereas in a control deck instead, because you're reacting to the spells that they're casting, it's more so just making sure that you have the mana up so that you can do what you need to do to stay alive.
Yeah, definitely. I like control decks a lot more, tempo decks a lot more right now in the current environment of cEDH. I want to have control. I want to be able to play around my opponents. I just think it's more helpful to do that rather than STAX the board out. There's too many situations, like I kind of mentioned before, where you fuck up the wrong person, whereas control, you're the one who's deciding when you're doing things and you're picking your windows better.
And you can save all of your interaction for win conditions and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just more fun for me to play, better play style. It's one of the reasons I like Tivit. I kind of look at Tivit as like a control deck. It's kind of like a mid-range deck, but those lines I think are very blurry in cEDH. I think of it like a tempo deck. I think of it like a Nimrus type of deck.
Yeah.
Because you're using the mana to buy back some of the mana that you invest into it. It's just a little bit of a bigger tempo deck. So a little bit closer to like a maybe traditional like control route. Like I'm playing Toxic Deluge and Dam, like 2 board wipes. You're playing Toxic Deluge. Are you playing a second?
I'm thinking about Languish, but that Toxic Deluge is definitely in there.
Yeah, Languish might be a good one.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of Tivit players play Languish because it does kill basically everything except your own commander.
Except your commander, yeah,
right?
Which is a really, really cool thing.
Kind of weird.
What I've also liked about control is that bounce spells are significantly less effective against you. A lot of times what will happen is bounce spells are used against your STAX pieces when you're playing a STAX deck so that someone can try to win the game and then they don't win and then someone else wins the game.
Yep.
That opportunity does not happen when you're in control because you, for the most part, are playing with the cards in your hand as opposed to the cards that you already have on the board like a STAX deck would be.
Yeah.
So that's a whole card type that basically is almost null and void against the interaction that you have.
Yeah, definitely. I think like the biggest like thing with control is kind of what we talked about already is just that you're in control. You're making more of the decisions, you're deciding, whereas STAX stuff can be used against you to defeat another player, and that's not a great spot to be in.
Yeah.
Can I add a card to our list of cards that we saw at Vegas? There was another one that I thought of that I feel like made a big impression.
Yes.
Lotho.
Lotho
was, I felt, very strong.
Lotho did do a lot of things,
It makes the treasure on your own cast, which is extra important to remember. The damage doesn't really, that didn't really matter or add up to me, but the extra treasures was just very helpful in STAX interactions. And I think Lotho is, although a 1 toughness creature, still very powerful.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I like that on the same turn, it's just 1 mana because you can just play like a rock afterwards. It's definitely a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
What about as a commander?
I don't think I like it so much as a commander. Because what do you do with the treasures then? Like, I feel like
spells.
I guess, but like you cast STAX pieces, but I feel like you want to do more than that.
If you play an ad nauseum deck, just mix the mana.
Not good.
Okay.
I want to just read a little bit more here about what SoulCal says, just in case we miss anything.
You got it.
I know the line for this is kind of blurry. A STAX can be viewed as controlling your opponent's resources, which it is. That is what STAX is. It is a form of control. It's like control, tempo, STAX.
Interesting. I view tempo as a child. So in 60 card, I feel like it's a little bit different. In 60 card, to me, tempo is a mix between control and aggro. So when you put pressure on your opponents and you control the tempo of the game as you do it. In cEDH, I view it more as a mix between like mid-range and control is where tempo is, just because aggro doesn't really exist in our format. We don't have aggro. We have combo, which is like the fast version of that, but I don't think all decks are combo. You know what I mean? It's not turbo.
Yeah, I guess I think of Nimrus more as tempo because you're just continuously getting the card back that you spend, so you're not really losing time in that kind of resource.
Yeah, you're not going down on card advantage.
Yeah. The clock is that you're getting closer to your Thassa's Oracle demonic consultation line, as opposed to like attacking. So it's aggression in a different form, I would argue.
But it's still, I would say, that's what tempo is. So tempo, but that's, I guess, so tempo is under the umbrella of control.
I agree with you. An aggressive control.
It's an aggressive version of control, whereas STAX is a defensive. Well, that's not even true because STAX is proactive. It's a different
kind of a defensive of aggressive control. Yeah. Whereas like land go control would be more of a defensive.
Yeah, I guess really the tempo is more defensive than the STAX though. The tempo is responsive.
Yes, it is more responsive.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and we will, even in 60 card formats, it will always be more responsive. You play your turn 1 Delver of Secrets, and then you leave your mana up forever until it wins you the game.
Right.
And then the last, I know you all touched to briefly mention it, how it is impossible for one person to control 3 turbo players. For example, Kinnan versus 3 Rog Silas. I guess that is a good point. This is the downside of control. This is when you do have too much to control and everyone's presenting a win and you just can't keep up with it. But I think that is part of the reason why it's important to pick the right control commander, and why like the Thrasios Vial Smasher Curiosity control isn't as popular, because something like Nimrus gets you the value that already tacked on for free. Whereas with Thrasios, you're either using your interaction or you're getting your card back. And if there's too much going on, you're just never getting your card back.
Yeah, I have this thought about Thrasios, as Thrasios is only good if your other commander is also good. Yeah. Thrasios can't be the main thing that you're doing. It's just, especially now with Orcish Bowmaster, it has to be a backup plan, and it's a great backup plan, but I don't love it as a plan A.
Yeah, I agree. I'd much rather be doing something else.
Great. I feel like we talked about the difference between control and STAX a little bit.
Yeah, and I do think that control is very viable. I think that there's a lot of control decks that are meta busting right now, so I think as long as you play it well and you play it confidently and with patience, that's what I'm looking for. I think you can pull off tons of wins with it.
Yeah, it looks a little bit different in this format than in other formats, but I think controlling, tempo-y, winning second style of gameplay is very powerful in cEDH.
Well, thank you very much, SoCal Acura, for submitting that.
And thank you for watching or listening. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at our Patreon, like our $100 patrons.
Mark Cirillo, Zachary Nelson, she doesn't even go here, Joseph Aarons, SoCal Acura, Stormageddon, Cool Bean Man, Luke Cook, AJ Albo Sabi, Demon of Rosgrees, Khawaja A. Hamid, Lauren Connell, and Baby G-Bus.
If you want to pick up any of our merch, you can do that at playtowinmtg.com.
Thank you so much, Dragon Shield, for supporting Play to Win. Make sure you use our affiliate link down below to help support the show.
And thank you, Dragon Shield, for paying us to go to Las Vegas and allowing us to do that. They paid for the trip and everything. So our sponsor, Dragon Shield, kicking ass. Thank you.
Woohoo!
You can follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram for more content.
Thank you so much for watching.
See you next time. Or listening.
Wavy Hashira, Dalton Poteet, Kadanis, Lutri's dad, Stashes, Justin, Man Solo, Pedro, Jacob Depp, Michael Ballou, Jan Wildfang, Thomas Bueno, Swampy McGee, David Nelson, and Jormax.
I still don't like your background. I don't know what to do.
What don't you like about the background?
It's just like a folded sweatshirt in a bed.
Yeah, it's homey. It gives it a homey feeling.
Gives it a homey vibe.
I'm in a fucking cardigan and it's
cozy.
Yeah, right? I feel like I should have a cup of hot chocolate and I should be your aunt. That's kind of how the vibe I'm giving off right now.
I thought you were going to say sexy weekend. Sorry, don't go at that.